How high can our crypto altcoins go over the next few months is the most asked question whenever I look at the comment section. Every single day, people are asking, hey, XRP, where can it go? Bitcoin, how high do I expect it to go? And things of that sort. And what if we were to tell you there's only 2, maybe 3 charts you really need to have in the back of your head, just stamped in, to get an answer to almost any one of these questions? Because it doesn't matter if we're talking about XRP, Solana, Ethereum, it doesn't matter. Based on these 2 charts which I'm about to show you, basically deduct the same kind of explanation, the same type of expectation for almost any altcoin. If it doesn't make sense, just keep watching for just a second, as it will. Now, before I move on, ladies and gentlemen, if you've not done it yet, make sure you go ahead and press the like button on this video, because why not? You've literally got nothing to lose. And second of all, if you're looking for a platform to trade crypto on, you can check out the link down below to 𝗏𝗏, as right now you're getting yourself a nice bonus just for signing up, and they've got no KYC. Take a look at it, right? They've got, for example, a 15% bonus right now, meaning if you put in more than 2K, you get $300 for free just to trade with, which is extremely nice. So check it out. Link is down below for that. You might need a VPN if you're in certain countries, but that's trading for you in the US. I mean, Alright, so chart number 1 that I think is extremely important in understanding where we think these altcoins can go and how high these altcoins can go in terms of price is the Bitcoin dominance chart. What we have seen is that over the past couple of months, Bitcoin's dominance has continued towards the upside, right? Matter of fact, it's been the last almost 3 years up and up and up and up. Now, this generally speaking showcases that, in this case, since we know prices went up for Bitcoin and for alts, that Bitcoin just gained more on average than altcoins did. But if we take a look at the past, every single time an altcoin season hits, for example, look at this. Where do you think the altcoin season was? Yes, I think everybody will be correct in saying that it was mostly in this period where the dominance fell off a freaking cliff, right? Now, whenever we are basically looking at the dominance right now, you're wondering, how long will altcoins be able to go up for and how high will they go? Well, from the baseline, we know that in the 2017 cycle, Bitcoin's dominance fell by about 65%, from 96%, and that means that out of the entire crypto market, Bitcoin was 96%, all the way down to about 35%. Then the next season, because again, Bitcoin's dominance went up and up and up, all the way back to 75, and then from 75, it went down to roughly, let's just quickly see, about 38%. This time around, we've already been climbing for a few years. We've gone up all the way back to about 66%. And again, this could potentially go slightly higher. But what we do know is that if we do not drop at least below 50%, we're not even close to the peak. Again, that is my own personal expectation. I believe that this cycle, Bitcoin's dominance, will probably not be as low as the previous ones, but that depends on the new investment products. In terms of ETFs, how much interest there is going to be in these treasury companies and things of that sort, because, like I said before, it just showcases Bitcoin's relative size in the overarching market, and it's hard to put a real number on that. All we know is that we are probably not in peak altcoin season if this chart has not nosedived just quite yet, all right? If you've not seen multiple weeks of massive red, and I'm not talking about what we saw here, right? Right here, we saw a slight decline of 12% or so, which was a period where altcoins flourished, by the way. Just look back at it. I'm talking minimum 30% down. I'm personally, just to be really, really conservative, I'm saying minimum 25% down, but this will most likely happen extremely fast. But that's just one of the charts. And like I said before, if we have not seen that massive drop just quite yet, I do not believe the altcoin season is at peak behavior, because again, when altcoins flourish, Bitcoin could still be doing well, sure, but relatively altcoins will be doing some way better numbers. But to add to that, I've got the overarching Bitcoin chart. And you might ask yourself, why is this relevant in understanding where altcoins are going to go? So let me just tell you one thing. Every single season, Bitcoin drops by about 80% before doing, in the last 2 cycles, about a 3.5x, all right, or something of that sort. Well, previous time, we went from the $20,000 mark all the way towards the $70,000 mark, and then back down 80%, just like previous times. And we kind of think that, hey, if he was able to go from $1,200 to $20,000, and then from $20,000 to $70,000, and well, basically every single time the peak happens almost at the exact same point. And altcoins, at least the top altcoins like XRP, no, actually XRP didn't, but let's say Ethereum and some other coins in that nature, were able to do also a 3x. I still believe that if Bitcoin, right, has not at least gone for a exponential splurge like it's done previous times, and again, we expect that to be around the September mark of this year, right? If it's not done it yet, Ethereum hasn't passed an all-time high just quite yet, and Ethereum, matter of fact, hasn't even like doubled or tripled from the previous all-time high. Because remember, ETH went from about $1,500 to $4,500 in this time span. Bitcoin went from 20,000 to 70,000. Bitcoin relatively, let's just say, is up how much? Just quickly see it here, is up, let's say, 60% or so. If ETH were to do that, it should be at roughly around $7,000, but it's right now at what, $2,500? It should still triple from current prices. That is just talking about ETH to get to the relative Bitcoin price right now. And that's again where I'm stating that most of the altcoins have not had any performance this season. But again, looking back at any of the run, people always say that this time is going to be different. This time we won't have a crazy surge. And then it happens because FOMO kicks in hard. Anyway, so I combine all these charts, so the two charts mostly that I've just stated, to conclude, hey, the baseline for any of these coins is that most likely we've not peaked yet because Bitcoin's dominance is not gone down off a cliff. So hey, we're going to still probably go higher. Bitcoin is already up 60%, and every altcoin really in the top that's ever going to gain, that's not going to zero straight away, would most likely outperform Bitcoin by at least the same number. Meaning, so if Bitcoin has gone up 60%, every altcoin should at least be doing that. But as long as the Bitcoin's dominance is not at any of these lower or previously mentioned levels, well, the gain marker for how high they can go, I always put at a baseline of 3x, meaning it can still do a 3x unless the market is already at peak euphoria, which right now it's not. And the reason I put that as a baseline is because that's what I think almost any altcoin is going to do. Now, where can you decide if one is better than the other? You know, if, for example, a hyperliquid is better than an XRP. And here comes the difficulty. In a really good market, for the most part, I think the main pushing factor is marketing and hype. In a bad market like the one we're seeing right now, you can't really put expected values on anything. And that's why I said the only two things you really can do for now is take a look at how far along in the season we are. We expect the craziest rush to be between August or so and of this year, 2025, and January of 2026. But if one or another altcoin is going to win, if one has a 3x potential or a 50x potential, you will not know until the hype is there. There are two main ways of investing. Value investing, trying to find cheap deals relative to where they should be in the market, or momentum investing, which is something that's going well, will most likely keep doing better. Now, depending on what type of investor you are, I think you should have a obviously different strategy, but also different expectations. If you're investing for the value, you're trying to buy something that's relatively cheap for where it should be at, right? So you're trying to buy something that's kind of like undervalued right now. Whereas on the other side, you're buying into whatever works because it'll just keep working better. Now, bull markets, basically, the only thing you're doing and looking for is obviously one of those two, but mostly whatever works will probably keep working better. Whatever's the hype will probably continue to be the hype, meaning more coins in that sector will do well. As I said before, every single coin that's out there that has shown some history of going down 80% and being able to recover, I think has the potential to triple from previous 2021 prices, with some coins obviously having a higher likelihood of outperforming, etc., with basically coins at the top of the top, ETH and XRP, having the highest likelihood of at least tripling. And if you go down lower, they have a lower likelihood of, doing a multiplier. But if they were to do well this season, if they pop off, they most likely would do more. And I tend to not really buy coins that I don't see at least doing a 10x this season, but that's all exceptions to the rule. That's all, for example, XRP, I think can still do a 10x, but that's all exceptions and my own personal expectation of where the hype is going to be, or the fact that, well, it was $3 in 2017-18. It should have been $10 in 2021, so it should right now be, 3 times that, so about $30. So that is, again, kind of mixing up the value, or mixing the value investment thesis in there. But really, I noticed I've gone down a little bit here on my chair. Think about it like this, all right? Just keep track of where we are in the cycle. So right now it seems, well, this is what I've previously drawn in, but here's a different way to look at it, right? You always have a peak, an 80% drop, and then another massive rally upwards. It's basically split up into 3 major phases. I don't have it lined out perfectly, but you have yourself let's just see it from here, the 80% drop, right? That's about 1/3 or so into the halving. That's where we peak at. Halving was July, or let's just say 2026 middle, the beginning of 2020 right there. And then we have about, March or April of 2024, we had it, right? About 1/3 into it, about, let's say, a year and a half or so is where we usually peak at. We expect it to be somewhere between August of 2025 and January of 2026, somewhere in there. Bitcoin will peak first, and again, we take a look at where it's going to peak at based on the dominance, because the dominance will start to decline from that point on forward. Once it's peaked, altcoins will flourish, and again, minimum 3x across the board, potentially way more. How high or which ones will depend on what type of season it is. If I had told you, oh, XRP could go to $10 in 2021, but all of a sudden the lawsuit kicked in, which is what happened, right? Nope, almost nobody could have expected XRP wouldn't be at least as good as Ethereum or some of those coins from the 2017, 2018 to the 2021 cycle. But because the lawsuit came in, all of a sudden it didn't happen no more, right? And since you do not want to set yourself up for failure, you always want to stay adaptive. You always want to stay on your toes, tippy toes, being able to move around. I don't think it's wise to really have too much of an expected value for where it's going to be, because I personally think most of the money in crypto will be made by the coins that get either launched that year or that just come up with the hype, because that's, again, the momentum investing. You buy whatever works because it just keeps on working. And just like with the AI boom or the meme coin boom, if you saw it, you didn't even have to see it early. You just notice what the hype is and you start focusing in on it, buying a ton of coins. It is not that hard to be extremely successful, 10x your money in a season. What is way more difficult is right now, now that things are not hyped up, trying to pick the right value coins because they should be worth more and do. Because like I said, most of the coins will still triple from their previous all-time high. Most of them. But figuring out which ones are not going to zero before any sort of market optimism, before any sort of new signs of retail coming in, is, in my opinion, just you trying to basically find the most undervalued companies, etc. But that's almost impossible from my side to tell you, right? Where can those go? Every single crypto has a different thesis, every single one of them. But if you're asking me, on average, what will the returns be? I think for most people, it'll be a minimum of a 3x, most likely significantly more, but that's the baseline if you just want to buy a coin once, never look back at it, triple the all-time high. So for a lot of coins, that's still a 10x from here. But like I said earlier, if you think I'm wrong, right? If you want to speculate even more on the short term with these things, I've got a couple of links down below where you can actually trade coins instead of just buying and holding. Just get the links down below and you'll figure it out. But yeah, let me know down below if you agree or disagree with my thesis. I just think this is exactly how it's going to go, though. Now, most of the money made in a very short amount of time, and you have these two charts to watch out for. Is it peaking on just the general Bitcoin chart? Has the Bitcoin dominance started dropping? Those are the two most important things to watch to basically get how much further of an altcoin season we still have yet to go. And as one more thing I just like to add, even though this is more debatable, is the XRP, or really whatever altcoin versus Bitcoin chart. Some people like to always look at this chart to showcase, hey, where has a coin like XRP, for example, been last season? In this case here, you can see it was worth X amount of Satoshi, about 25,000 in 2017. Here was the lawsuit, and here we don't know yet. It should be able to get relatively back to its previous prices, or at least close to it. For XRP, that would mean if it were to be able to get the same relative position in the market, that's roughly 1,200% added on top, right? So plus 12x or 13x from these current prices. Now that is of course pretty massive, and that's what I always say. You do not know what the major next point of hype is going to be the next season. If I were to just look only at the XRP versus Bitcoin chart, I'd believe that we do a 13x this season because, well, it was previously able to do that. But because you have to look at current circumstances, for example, the 2021 run, we saw the lawsuit, it didn't happen. But maybe when in 2021, I would have told you and looked at it thinking, oh, this is where it's going to head to, but it didn't. Now, this, again, is a pretty good indicator of whether or not something is undervalued, though we previously stated back in this 600 range of Satoshi, or 700 even, that it's quite undervalued relative people have been overselling it quite a lot, and that's where you can see this is where the juicy opportunities were at to buy XRP relatively quite cheap. Right now, we are basically back again at the upper edge of it, where relatively, if we take a look at the past couple of years, XRP still has a pretty good gain to go. If it doubles from here, for example, I don't think it would really be that odd in the overall market. It could happen without causing too much of a ruckus. But like I was trying to say, you have to look at it from a month by month, week by week, year by year perspective. For example, if you take a look at ETH versus Bitcoin, we take a look at this chart right now, you can see, whoa, it just looks as if ETH has fallen off a cliff over the past couple of months. Looking at it, you'd say, oh, wow, it still eventually should be able to do maybe like a 900% or maybe like 400% gains just to get back to the previous points. But maybe because so many new layer ones have come along, maybe because so much of the volume now has moved over to Solana, it would never, right? And I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying relatively, I always think it's nice to have about a 3x as the baseline for this reason. And then as the market progresses and you see whatever starts working, you go a bit harder on a certain sector. But to predict everything up front, I don't think it's that nice. But if you really want a video where I just talk about every single one of my price predictions exactly, just for what I think is going to happen in more detail, let me know down below. But I think this is the better, wiser way to look at it, just to avoid being let down, and because it works on so many more altcoins than just 1, 2, 3, or 10 specific ones.